Hey, it's Jack from Alpha Charts with a weekend video for subscribers. Today is December 6th, 2025. Before we get started, this video is for informational purposes only. These are not recommendations to buy, sell, or hold any stock or security. And I may hold positions in some of the equities mentioned. Know your time frame and risk tolerance. All right, thank you all for being subscribers. I do appreciate you and welcome. This is the free view week to everybody else that is watching. This is kind of what the weekend video looks like. So here we go. Um, we could start off with actually, you know what? Let's start off with a few items here. First, earnings. You see, there's starting to slow down, but there are some big ones going on here. You have Oracle, and I think Costco is actually a really big one, but also Broadcom in there. So again, just know your earnings dates, okay? As long as we're doing this, let's look at the economic calendar, and I think Wednesday. FOMC interest rate decision, and then of course at 2:30 is the presser where I think that he's one of Jerome Powell's last ones, the last one of the year for sure. And he's got I think one more decision after this before he's replaced. So that could be a big one. And then talking about FOMC, let us see what are the probabilities. And you see a quarter point cut is pretty much being priced in. That is what the odds are saying is going to happen. So anything that deviates from this could potentially shock the market one way or the other. Also, we've had a little bit of a nice run. It could be a little bit of, buy the rumor, sell the news. And let's look at the charts and see how much of a nice run we've had. So Dow Jones Industrial, choppy to higher, right near all-time highs. That looks, I mean, really good. Are we slightly extended? Yeah, we're just a little extended, but that's what the market does, right? It gets a little bit extended, pulls back to the moving averages, a little extended, lets the moving averages catch up, and that's the way it goes. Nothing goes straight up. So you got to be able to withstand that little bit of volatility along the way, but it looks like the uptrend has started again, and we should be looking for things, obviously, to buy. There's no reason to think that the market's, gonna go down or crash from here. SPY, same basic idea. RSP, equal weighted SPY, right at all-time highs. I mean, that's all bullish. Again, is it extended? It is. So, could we start the week with maybe a little pullback, let the moving averages catch up? It's possible. Again, nothing goes straight up, but you have to look at this chart as being very bullish overall. Qs, same idea. Equal weighted Qs. Let's keep going here. Again, look at the space here. So, and again, it looks like an exhaustion type candle. Let me zoom in on that just a little bit. Got just a little bit ahead of itself. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a little pullback next week, at least to start the week. Mid caps, same idea, is trying to break out of this really big base, right? Really big base here, trying to break out of there. But it got extended again. So let's, may need to just pull back just one more time, make a higher low, and then go. And IWM, same idea, right? Just huge base, moving out of there. Okay. XLF, again, we'll just go through these real quick. It's again, there's your, had a really good week. So kind of like it may be a little bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news event, right? Because you see how far some of these charts have gotten relative to the moving averages. SMH, again, there's a lot of space right there. XSD, a lot of space right there, right? Quite a bit. IYT, tons of space, right? Transports. Equal weight transports, same thing. Housing. So housing led us, right? It led us on the way up, on the way down, and even on this rebound that we see now. And now this consolidation is kind of ahead of the market in a lot of ways, right? If you look at like, something like XTN, you see how you have the big up. We don't have that consolidation yet. Where like on ITB, we have a nice up, and there's your consolidation into the moving averages. And good chance if we see a bounce here, that's going to be a good indicator for the market in general. If the market goes through consolidation, I consider housing many times a leading indicator. So we'll be watching this to see what this does if the market goes through a choppy, consolidation type of pullback. XHB, same idea. Mag 7, great week, by the way, for the Mag 7, up 1.29. It's a really nice week, and again, they're not too far extended. They were a lot more measured because you have, and we went through this kind of last week where you have, just go through this. You have Google that's really leading, Apple, which was doing pretty good for a while, just a little pullback, nothing. Tesla leading, Amazon not doing quite, kind of not doing great, right? Nvidia really just not doing great at all right there, right? We want to see this really turn the corner. It looks nothing like the Google chart, which is straight up to the right. So that's why Nvidia, I'm not saying it's going to fall apart, but this is definitely not a place where, I don't think it's a leader the way that it was. Let's put it that way. Microsoft, again, not leading, and Meta, nice rebound this week, and we'll see if that could continue. But again, that's a very, very strong move. And I think that plays, especially this Meta move, into this MAGS chart. Let's just get rid of this. Come on. There we go. Into the MAGS chart right here. And up 1.7 on the week. Again, look at the weekly chart. I'm sorry, 1.3 on the week. But very nice move. Bitcoin, I'm hoping this is just a higher low and it can continue to build and work higher because I think as a risk on risk off asset, we want to see Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least be participating if it's a risk on environment, right? And right now it's not showing that. So is that a over concern, too much of a concern by me? It's not too much of a concern, but it's something that I'm noting. And if we see it market some weakness, I think we can see some real weakness in these areas. All right, let's go to the internals. Um, New highs, new lows. They look fine. Advanced decliner is fine. I think the stage two analysis versus stage four, I think that's a big deal, and I want to see stage two start to lead. Hopefully, we get that next week. I think that'll be confirmation of a bull market, right? So again, we're not going to wait for the cross to say we're bullish, right? Where this is confirmation of a bull market. So yeah, that'd be good to see. Power trend is off. Net new highs are printing, which is good to see. And breadth is, for the most part, improving. Okay, going to the SPY chart. The momentum is still good. Again, a little bit hot. So again, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a little bit of a pullback. Maybe something similar to what it looks like here. See how it got real hot? It kind of pulled back. Then there's little shakeouts along the way. As far as the FOMO indicator, this down here, again, this is where we thought there could be a little bit of a pullback, and we got that little bit of a pullback. But we're not overheated. We're not extreme on the FOMO indicator. So there is a little bit of room. So we may see it. Again, but just like this kind of reference area where we got real hot up here, you see how we got, extended, very similar to that, right? And boom, then we hit it, made a higher low. So we may see something like that. And then you saw another little like shakeout. Again, moving averages are just catching up. And then you see it comes back. So that should be our, when we think about the markets, we don't want to be, if we believe a bullish run has started again, and I do believe that, we don't want to be too tight with our stops because these little shakeouts could take us out of a position that we were really, well bought into, and we were just too tight with stops. So that's something to consider, right? If we are in this type of environment, we don't want these little shakeouts to shake us out, right? Give it enough room. A bull market's going to be a little bit more forgiving than something like this, more of a bear market, right? Or even a choppy sideways market. This is not so forgiving in here, right? This is not so forgiving. But if we believe that this is the start of the next bull run, then we can be a little bit, I don't want to say looser. That's not the right word, but it's going to be more forgiving. So we don't have to be so tight with stops. I only update my stops twice a week, right? I give it room to run. And I know that some people may do it every day and some people may do it more or less. That's just what I do. I try to do it twice a week because I don't want to be so tight during a bull market that I get shaken out of names. Let's look at VIX. So the VIX, not the Vox. Hold on, I'm sorry. There we go. There's the VIX. VIX 15.4. We talked about it. We didn't like it up here. And we said we want to see it move really to 16 or lower. And now we're at 15.4. beautiful. Again, you can see we kind of, this is the area where, we get a little choppiness in this area. It likes to hang out, above or below 16. And that's roughly a 1% move in the SPY, right around 16. So that's an estimate, of course. But you can see that this is, I think, where we get some really good trending markets. And I think that's where we're at. I think we're into an area we have good trending markets. These are harder markets when we're on this side of the rise of the VIX. Even here, that's a harder market to trade. But when we're in this area, that's a nice market, right? That's very nice. And going back to you know, this is the best market right in here, right? That's going to be really nice VIX. I believe it basically didn't even move 1%. It was like less than 1% the entire year or something like that. That's a nice market in there, and hopefully we're back to that type of idea here. So the question is, does credit spreads confirm the VIX? And the answer is yes. Credit spreads are absolutely confirming the VIX. They're falling. They're nice and tight. That looks, again, very healthy, very bullish. Percent of stocks above the 50-day. There's room to the upside here. You see the recovery. That looks good. And put call ratio, equity only. And you see that people are getting bullish again, right? And again, so we may get a little shakeout, right? We're getting to the point where we're getting into that more extremish, you see when we get up here, really, I have it set at zero point 0.5, so we're not that far off. But you see there's little shakeouts when we get into this general area. Listen, I put these red marks in there. They're my lines in the sand, but it doesn't mean that they have to be. They could be, 0.52, right, instead of 0.50. We're in that area, and that's the more important idea right now. All right, so let's get into the next charts. And yeah, I mean, just to wrap this part up, I think that we have a bullish market. Nothing goes straight up. I think we're going to get pullbacks along the way. We're starting to get, again, some air underneath, and with FOMC, it feels like a buy the rumor, sell the news. Does that mean that we're crashing down? No, it just means that Wednesday, Thursday, we may just see some more volatility coming into the market. That's it. I think that gives us opportunities in names that we want to own to get in at hopefully prices that we can live with, right? And the other part of that is we'll also see what doesn't shake out, and you'll see what institutions are really holding on to, and that gives us a lot of information too. All right, so let's go into the TML list. So the TML list is my true market leader list. This is a long-term hold. I have it in a separate account, and I have them tiered. The ones that I think that are my highest ideas are in section one. My mid ones are in section two, and the ones that are coming up and coming are in section three. Okay, so section one, yeah, obviously we have Tesla. I like what they do. As far as just they have their hands in everything, robotics, self-driving, I mean everything, and the chart's showing it, right? Here's your 50-day. It's again getting extended, looks really good. Here's Google. I think that's another one. They've really proven from AI to they're in robotics, they're in everything. Let's get this out of here. They look really good. Again, look how beautiful this is trending. My tier two, Robinhood. They've already had a great run. I think they have more in them. But again, and they're just emerging. Very, very, I mean, tactically, it looks really good here, right? I mean, we can even use this as a swing trade. I'm going to add this to actually our red list, which is our swing trading list, because that's right here. You want to get long versus, 126.75 or something. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that reward to risk right there. SoFi, it had an offering, which is what this was. They actually bought it back up some. I know they didn't get included in the S&P, and a lot of people are kind of upset about that. We'll see how this reacts. It is under the 50-day, but because that offering mostly. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of time and keep it on the section two. If not, it will drop to section three if it stays under the 50-day. Palantir, that's nice, right? That's a recovery right in here. Really like the way that looks versus, 170, this little bunched up moving average right there. That's not bad at all. That's another one that could be added to the red list, right? Um, and then Broadcom has earnings this week, which is why it's in tier two. One of the reasons why it's in tier two. But again, it looks really strong. Last one's Coinbase. You know, crypto's not doing well. Coinbase is not doing well. If it retakes the 50, that may change my mind on this one, but I'm just watching it. EOS, it's just because it's such a small name. That's part of the reason why it's in section three. As it grows and gets bigger, it could potentially move up. But for now, also, it's not as diversified. It's just as batteries, where if you notice, these names are, they do a lot of things, right? They do a lot of things, where EOS it does really just one thing. That keeps it lower on the list. And of course, Rocket Lab. This one is the rockets are starting to look good again, and Rocket Lab looks is starting to participate as well. So that looks really good. So that's my TML list. This is longer term holds. You really use the 50-day moving average as a guide here. Let's get into the red list next. So red list. So this is my swing trading idea list, and there's 53 names on this list, and it's a big list. So this is what I would consider my watch list, and this is for idea generation. So these are the names that I think look really, really good. I can't be in everything, right? So this is where, as we go through the charts, you get to look at them and jot down tickers you like and make the trade your own, obviously. Uh, you know, it's I believe that if we can stay in the strongest names possible, right? If we keep our universe to 50 names, there's what thousands and thousands, I think what 7 or 8 thousand names and that potential that you could invest in. Well, if we keep it to 50 names of the strongest names, our chance of making money goes up pretty significantly. So just sticking to this list, I think, is already a winning formula. I do the focus list video tomorrow for everybody that gives my favorite, usually around 5 names or so of my favorite names. But this is where, you again, it's idea generation. All right, so let's get going. Google, again, it's just a nice look to it, right? I mean, you have this kind of, little flaggy look. You could buy it versus that breakout if you really wanted to, right? On a swing trading time frame. By the way, and this is my swing trading list. ASTS, too far gone for me, but definitely on my. I want to watch this one. Very strong look to it. The real. This is one that I really like. If it can, really like, if it can start to retake this VWAP from this big gap up, I think the real looks good. Look how nice and tight it's been in here, right? And what does that do? It lets the moving averages catch up. And now that they're caught back up for the most part, now we could look for that next move higher. Again, I really discourage chasing, right? If you chase this gap, you got chopped up, right? Whereas if you waited and now it's at a better buy point. Dutch Brothers, big pullback, but again, look how extended it got. So I think this is very viable in here. This was actually on our focus list last week. It never triggered. Um, Maybe at the end of the week it did. Let me see, where do we have the buy in there? Our buy was around 57-ish. So yeah, I mean it was pretty close to being triggered. And again, you could have adjusted the buy. These are just, example trades that the way I was looking at it to start the week. So obviously, you have to make your own decisions. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this as versus this 50-day moving average, 56.75 or so. That's not a bad spot right here, right? You're talking about, a very small risk. Um, and, this is, it's a coffee shop, right? Coffee shops tend to do good. So that's an interesting one right here, right? Again, not chasing, because if you chased, you gave a lot of it back, if not all of it. On clouds, another retail, retail. Dutch Real is retail. Dutch Brothers is retail. Tesla is retail. I'm sorry, on cloud is retail. Um, which is on holdings, looking really good. Looking for that pullback. There it is, right? That was the buy on the retake of the VWAP right there. If you chose to, I think that was the entry right there. See how it's near all the moving averages. They're all, for the most part, caught up and is above the 50. and that would have been a good buy spot around 42.50, and it kept going. Tesla is, among other things, retail, looks really good. We talked about that. That was actually the pick of the week last week around this. We talked about on actually 2 days, two different potential buy points. If you missed the first one, gave you a second one. Um, and it did really well. It was up, what was it, up 5.77% last week, right? Trying to break out to all-time highs. Yeah, that's a great looking swing trade. I own it in my TML list. Here's a newer one. This is a National Vision Holdings, and yeah, they do, I guess, eye places, glasses, I guess. But nice little cup and handle, right? And there's your breakout, and consider this one, right? That's is it too far extended? Yeah, it's a little extended. I mean, I'd probably do it versus maybe the low if it decided to move higher from here. Friday would have been a perfect breakout spot. But look at this volume. As it's moving higher, there is no selling going on in this name. That's really interesting to me. This is clear, in my opinion, accumulation on the right side of the base. That's what I look for. Noble Energy, again, oil and gas names. We've been talking about these for a while. Had the big move up 8%. Now just some consolidation. Again, just a little bit too extended. Valaris, about the same. I think it's just a little bit extended. Rig, roughly the same, right? These are all oil and gas. CNX, again, look how extended. That's more of a reversal candle right there. So definitely be wary of some of these names now. But are they trending higher? Yeah, I mean, that's a nice little trend higher, right? In oil and gas. Pump was out on our focus list last week. I had a nice run. It was up 14% on the week. Very nice if you got into that one. We talked about versus 970, and now it's at it's much higher now. So really nice look there. Again, is it extended? Absolutely not the place I want to enter this. I still own it, but I'm gonna sit through a little pullback here probably, and the moving averages catch up. I'm okay seeing through a little consolidation. Lemonade doing very, very well. Also, I still have my little position there. SoFi, we talked about earlier. I liked it better last week. Again, going to watch that a little bit on the swing trade. New Holdings, sorry. I always want to say Nucor. New Holdings. It's a financial, I think it's Brazilian. Is new Brazilian? Yeah. Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and the Cayman Islands, and the United States. Um, and you see it had a nice little gap up there and moved higher. And we've tried to get in it before. These didn't really work out for us all that well. Um, and it went without us, but now it kind of pulled back. And now if it could consolidate, we could consider this one again. I have no position there. Cypher's one that I told you I really liked. Again, it got a little extended. There's your pullback, right? 10% pullback, not little, a good size pullback. And now it's trying to reestablish here. This one looks pretty good. And something like here, I like this inside day. So see this right here? Nice inside day, and this is where you can manage risk in a more volatile name like Cypher, right? So in a name like this, see the highs? The high is what, 1962? So I would buy it at some place over that high, maybe 1970 or 1965, a few pennies higher, or whatever. It's got to break the high. And that's where a buy point could be. And my low or my stop would be either the low of the day or moving average. Usually it's the low of the prior day. And roughly that is going to be 6%. So that's a way to manage risk in a more volatile name if you want to get in. And again, you could go for a VWAP or something else if you intraday if you wanted to. I'm more, I kind of stick to the day and weekly time frames and sometimes monthly. So that's the time frame from my perspective. But if you are an intraday trader, you can use intraday areas as well. But again, a break of the high on this inside day, inside and up, is the way that we call it. That is interesting. And again, the prior trend higher, there's your consolidation. And again, I think a inside and up day makes a lot of sense. So that's Cypher, looks pretty good. Again, this is idea generation. You like the name, write it down, make the trade your own. If not, pass. TerraWolf, again, this weekly chart is what has me really interested in this name. Again, nice kind of base. There's your kind of consolidation. I don't want to call it a cup and handle, but I do like the higher lows along the way. And now it is, kind of like making that little final hopeful consolidation on the daily chart, I'm going to make this bigger so everyone can see it. It's kind of come back into the moving averages. And so, a break of a trend line like that, could be a potential buy if you're interested. You have this kind of like inverse head and shoulders look to it. So this in this little base, if you want to call this the handle, if you want to say that's a big cup and handle, it's a Bitcoin miner. Know what you're buying, right? It's a Bitcoin miner, but it can move. I mean, that's, 10% moves higher, 7% moves lower. So again, know what you're buying, right? And the characteristic of it. But, it went up 59% here, right? So it definitely can move. But probably if we see like Bitcoin moving higher over the weekend, that would give me a good inclination. This could potentially move higher, to start the week, because it's probably going to follow what Bitcoin does. Robinhood, we just talked about it versus the moving averages here. I really like that, man. That's a very small risk, 3-4%, within the context of this healing bullish market. It's not bad, right? It may work, it may not work. There's no guarantees in anything, but that looks pretty good. Garden Health, I'm still in this one from that 96. Gave some back, listen, 6% move down. Don't love that. I'm using the 23 day as my stop, and we'll see if it can continue higher. If it doesn't and stops me out, it made some money on it. And if if not, I did well. We'll just keep it trending. GMED, another one I really like. It moved nicely, 2%, 2.5% on Friday. Yeah, I just want to see these moving averages catch up a little bit more. Still just a little bit extended. See the yellow crosses? That is 10 ATRs from the 50-day moving average. That's when you see it. And that just means that for me, 10 ATRs is pretty extended from the 50-day and likely needs to go through a consolidation period. It's not so much a sell signal, but maybe take some profits if you see it, because it may be more of a choppy sideways type of move versus, continuation. So that's what those yellow crosses mean on this. TMDX. So this was an interesting one. I talked about it in the midweek video, around 140-ish. It kind of came down into that area and it continued lower. So it's a little bit, I own some of it, but I'm still playing versus the 133. So so if you bought it like I did on the way back down, it's still doing just what it needs to do. And I love, see how this day it stopped at the 23 day, right? Boom, stopped it right in its tracks. That's important to me because that tells me that if I put my right underneath the 23 day, my stop, then it's respecting it. And if it stops respecting it, that's the information I need, and I'm out, right? So right now my stop is going to go just underneath, right, right around that 133 or so, just underneath that 23 day, and hopefully this is where it turns the corner and starts to move higher. On the weekly chart, if you look at it, this is an amazing spot. Now I don't love that kind of it tried to break out and came back in. Don't love that, but it's a little cup. Maybe it's making this little handle, and we'll love to see this go higher. It's it doesn't have a ton of volume on it, right? It averages close to 1 million shares, so it is what it is. But yeah, this could be a spot versus the 23 day low risk type of entry in TMDX, which is one of those kind of high flyer type of names, right? Um, so again, there's your big base. There maybe it's making this kind of little handle-ish, and yeah, versus 133 or so. Yeah, even if we bought just right in here, that's only about 2.5% risk. That's not bad at all, right? This is the low risk, high reward setups that I really like. Now, they don't always all work, as nothing in this market always works. But if we can get out with very, very small, nicks on these tries, we're going to make multiples versus that risk. Joby, we like this one versus this reversal candle right there. It's continuing very nicely now above the 50-day. Love that. It looks like the moving averages are healing. I'm just giving it a little bit of room and working through it. I'm actually in options in this one. So for more volatile names, I like these options because if long dated, near the money options. And long dated to me is 3 to 4 months out. And so does that do for me? It lets me stay in a name through volatility and not get shaken out so easy, especially if something's like underneath a 50-day like this, right? But I think it's got a reversal in. That's where I like to use options. I'm not an expert at options in no way, shape, or form. I'm not pretending to be, but that's worked for me very well. Again, it helps keep me in names. Like even like rig. Just go back to rig real fast. Oh, come on. RIG. There we go. Rig, Transocean. This right here, this was an offering that happened, but I was in options and it was already done. So I couldn't do anything. I was already in the name, but I let it kind of just work through and it recovered with knowing where my stop was, right? On a closing basis, if it took out this candle's low right there on a closing basis, I was out. It never did that. I even held through this spot right there, which isn't fun and you hate it. But it was worth it, right? And if it took out this spot, this low on a closing basis, then I'd be out, right? That's my sell. And I try to sell at 50%. If I lose 50%, that's usually my out as well. I can't say I'm perfect at that either. Options are tough, and you can lose money in options very easily. But knowing the market, if the market conditions are higher, right? I think we have a better opportunity. And this was when we started to identify market conditions were changing, and I saw that reversal. You know, some people call this an oops reversal. Undercut and rally is another way to look at this, right? Undercut this also in the space, and then rally. So that U and R, if you ever see that terminology, that's what this was, and it's paid off so far for me so far. FLNC, you know, a lot of these newer energy names, again, super extended. If you got in at this 19 spot here, I know it wasn't the easiest one to get into or anywhere close to it. You've done very well. We talked about that just, was that 2 weeks ago, the 29th, or was it midweek? Had to be midweek. Yeah, it was midweek. So yeah, there you go. Fluence Energy, it looks really good. Lunar. Actually, no, you know what? Fluence was on our almost list last week. That's what this was. So that was just last week on the almost list. If you got in at 19, which was very, very reasonable to get in at, you did very, very well with that one. So congrats if you took it. And that's why I didn't take this trade. Wasn't a trade I took, but it was on the focus list almost side. So when I do my focus list, you know, we always go over last week, we go over this week, we have the pick of the week, and then the almost. The ones that, yeah, there's something for me that isn't perfect, but it may be okay for you. And it's really, really close to making the focus list. So I always share those. Again, it's about just creating as many ideas as possible in the best names possible because the outcomes could be really nice. And this was a very nice outcome if you got into Fluence. A lot of these lunar and space names are doing well again. Again, inside and up. This is exactly, let's see what this is, top to bottom. Yeah, this is exactly inside and up. That's what I look for in here, right? We just talked about how these inside days off of after a big move could be a nice little catalyst. If it breaks to high here, and then your stop is at the low, and then that's a reasonable risk reward versus this area. If it's still too extended for you, again, it would be for me probably in this right here. Then you just pass, right? But this is another opportunity, right? If you see those inside days, here's EOS. Another one, here's another one. And this one is actually, you know, right around 5%, but the moving averages are actually closer, which is kind of nice to see. But EOS looks really good, right? Yeah, and this was actually a focus list name last week. Here we go. We talked about getting in around 1450, stop around 14. That would have worked out nicely. You know, if on the way pull back and then moving higher right there. What else do we have? Rocket Lab. This one's healing, right? Again, another one. It's you play it inside and up, and this one is actually probably even better because the moving averages are now really kind of zooming up, and you're going to get a nice little clustering very soon. So that one looks really good, right? And you can even use the 50-day. Say, okay, well, if it gets above $50, that could be good enough, right? And then use your 50-day as your stop. That's even better, right? So a lot of ways you'll play a name like this, especially that we see that space in general is a th new theme that's recovering. Not new, but it's a recovering theme. Zometry. There's your big gap up off earnings. Again, I believe not chasing because you would, again, short term you may have made a few dollars, but if you want to swing it, you're getting stopped out. And then now, this is where moving averages have caught up. It is within a buyable range, and it just barely, but did overtake the VWAP from the gap up here. This is a setup that I really like. Again, if you do that, it's 6%. Again, depending on where you get in, you buy, right around 60-ish maybe, and put your stop around this, the low, something like that, right? That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, that's a nice name. It again doesn't trade a ton of volume, just know that. But why do I like this name so much? Because it's got a huge base, right? I mean, I absolutely love this base. I think that if it can turn around right here, let's just kind of pull this out, turn it around right here. This is a nice base, and that's what I'm looking for. These big base on the weekly. Again, that's my time frame, daily, weekly. I look at monthly as well. That's what I'm looking for. This Zometry. Again, smaller cap name. Small caps are doing well though, right? So it's okay to dabble in these small caps when IWM is kind of leading the market, which is what we feel like it's doing now. At least I do. Yeah, so that looks really good. And again, it has some really big gap ups on earnings. There's a 43%. Here's earnings, 29, 28%. And so, we'll love to be able to hold this in a longer term swing. And because we're getting these big earnings jumps, that's what we want to see, right? That looks really good. Rich Tech Robotics, again, a smaller name, but in that robotics theme. And I like how it really strongly retook the moving averages. Planet Labs has earnings coming up. But again, there's your inside day. I'm not going to buy it versus here because, we played it in here. Was it there? No, we tried it in here in November. This one, very low risk, which I liked it back in November. But here, earnings coming up. I don't want to be involved in it, but I do like this kind of inside look right there. Bloom Energy, nice little rebound right there. ONDS. We talked about this one on 11/29. That was last week, but we also talked about it before that too. Whereas, yeah, there you go, 11/22. We talked about it in here, right? And we caught this. We caught this big 30% move higher, and now we're just letting it trend and move go. So that's the spot right in here, right? That was a good spot. We talked about it, potential add, right? Buy or add near 765. Again, nice spot, right? That was a nice spot as it was coming back into the moving averages. Go flag. And we popped. So two opportunities to get into ONDS. Again, make the trade your own though. Frog. Love it. How it kind of, gapped up to almost 27%. Again, not to chase. Here it came back. And now, again, chopped around that VWAP a little bit, but this looks like it's going to be like the real breakout. Nice little move right there. Wouldn't mind seeing inside day or something, but that's again nice volume as well on this one. FROG. Apple, I still have a small position in Apple. It's doing nothing wrong, and it's a big liquid leader. And sometimes I like a name like this because it stabilizes my portfolio a little bit from the volatility of a faster moving name like a XMTR or RR, TMDX or whatever. Those are going to be faster, smaller cap type names, mid cap names. Where Apple obviously is one of the biggest names in the world, and so it kind of again stabilizes my equity curve a little bit, and it's in a nice uptrend, so it's not going to hurt me too bad. APLD. Okay, we talk about it here. I mean, that was a 16% pop. Don't chase. Came back in. Moving averages have caught up. Now it's starting to move higher. Now we can kind of look at a name like this. Going to the 23 days, probably too much for me, but, versus the low or even versus the VWAP if it breaks the high, right? So you get in at 32 and your stop could be maybe $30.75 or something like that. And that's a reasonable reward to risk in a higher flying type of name. And APOD is just that. And when we go to a weekly chart, again, we talked about being involved in there back in August, back when it was, coming out of here, right? So if you got in it coming out of here, you had a very nice run. That was the last time we talked about it. And, it came back, really came back pretty hard, actually. Top to bottom, this corrected 52%. That's why we have risk management along the way. But now it's kind of coming back around. And that's, near all-time highs. And it's looking pretty good right here, right? Again, ways to get in. Do I love the volume right here? The answer is no. I don't like that these red peaks I would rather see this reverse, right? I want to see the green higher than the red. So don't love the way the volume is looking on the right side of the base. So that may be a dark cloud for me over this particular name, but overall, yeah, I could manage risk versus the anchored VWAP if it breaks higher from here. UiPath, very strong name, very, very strong. Again, no chasing. I want to see this build out something here, and then potentially by that breakout. It got on my radar from this highest volume ever. Well, guess what? It's right there. Did another one after earnings, and it was a bigger, even bigger move. So again, it shows the strength and power. And difference is, see the next day, it dropped 8%. Next day, it went up again. Very strong. Very, very strong name here. Again, just too extended for me at this point. And VTS. I talked about this one yesterday, actually, and it'll probably be on the focus list this week. I like this one versus the 50-day or versus the low. I have 915-ish in there, which is right around where the 50-day is, right? 50 days at 914. You can make your own. You can put $9 if you want to. Right now I have it at about 3% risk. You could play this versus, you could buy the breakout, the high, and just play it more like an inside day if you wanted to. But NVTS is a semiconductor name. It is recovering. Now, it did not retake the VWAP from this high. Does it need to? I don't know if it needs to because that's a different, from the start of this run, let's say if here, that's about where it's at right there. And I'm looking at this VWAP as a potential target. Right, so maybe 1130 is a potential target. Now, when you zoom out, as we always like to do, and we look at this, come on, there we go. When we look at this, again, a lot like that Zometry trade, right? Where it's making this big base. It tried to go, it couldn't really go. Came back around, and this is where if it could come back again, it could be really, really strong. Again, look at this volume on the weekly chart. Giant volume, right? And then what do you see here? Giant volume. And as it comes back in, you see this volume dry up, right? Same thing here and same thing here, right? So that's it. So this is a way to get in, hopefully before that next one. And by the way, this is obviously institutional buying right in here, right? So we know that the institutions are starting to buy this name just by the amount of volume put in, right? It moved 78% in 1 week here. And now it's come back and consolidate. That was 112% in 1 week. That's not me and you buying, right? That is institutional buying. And look how it went from no volume at all and this. That's nice to see. That's very aggressive buying. I love that. You know, you can just see it right there, right? That's volume. So there you go. NVTS, another name. Again, you can play it versus 50, the 23 day. I threw this VWAP accidentally in there. There we go. Um, you know, but look how this is getting launchpad-esque. Not quite a launchpad yet, but it's getting there. So again, a name I want to try to stay in. I bought some options in here. Why? Because it's a more volatile name, right? And in more volatile names, I prefer to buy options. That's just the way I like to do, but you can swing trade it too very easily, right, in this area. VSAT. Again, space is a name that we like. We talked about it, that was months ago. But look at this. Moving averages all bunched up right there. inside day. That's exactly what we're looking for. Look at this beautiful inside day right there. That's our inside day setup right there. You buy the versus the break of the high. What's a high? High is 35.59, so 35.60 is fine. The stop, you could do the 23 days at only 3% risk. I mean, that's a really nice setup right there. That's on Viasat or VSAT. Again, on the weekly, let's just look at that real fast. Again, those were just old notes. It kind of broke out. You see the polarity, very nice polarity here. We could actually pull this even further back if we wanted to, right? Support, 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 resistance, resistance. Broke it. Now it's back to support, support. That's nice to see. It does have earnings. When is that? December 31st, so it's a few weeks out. Again, that may play a role in what you want to do, but but overall, this is a nice little setup right there. Palantir we talked about again versus these bunch of VWAPs. That's nice, right? That's very nice. You don't want to see it break the VWAPs, the 50-day, 23-day, the 9-day. Those are my moving averages. That looks really good. Steel Dynamics. Steel names have been working for us. This one in particular, STLD, industrial. Right, it's an industrial name. Looking at this again, is it reversal type candle? If you want to take profits, take your profits if you wanted to, right? But this is a very nice kind of VCP style breakout. It's trending higher, and I'm going to be a little patient with it. My stop is already in the money, so that's good. And we'll see if it can continue higher, right? If not, I'll be out of the trade, make a few dollars, and move on. It won't be like a stellar trade, but it'll be a positive trade, and we always like positive trades no matter what. Gold miners continue to do and look pretty well, pretty good until they don't. We're going to continue to watch them. I don't own any right now. The mining complex, whether it's steel, whether it's rare earth, gold, silver, they're all looking really good. I can't be in everything. Gas, right? So those whole materials, energy, that whole kind of complex. A lot of them are interest rate sensitive type names. Um, Natural gas, don't love the way this gave back a whole bunch yesterday, but I still have a position in this one versus, it's not doing anything wrong. It's doing everything right, actually, right? Now it's super extended. Expect some pullback in this one, but natural gas is doing really good. Again, we watched it versus reversal, and it's held up very well. We talked about biotechs a couple times. We talked about it here on 11/16. Still trending higher. If you're in this name, let it work. It's doing nothing wrong. Let it work. We also talked about versus Labu earlier on, around 108. Again, anytime I put a target, it's a best guess suggested target. Maybe take some profits. And you see it came back, retested that general area, and bounced. And we talked about last week that if it did bounce, that would be an area that you could consider, basically could get back long again if you did sell some into the strength, or took partial profits because holding this 150-ish area, that would be real and bouncing really, really strong. So Lab Blue is a triple leveraged biotech ETF or ETN, and again, let it trend, let it work, right? Depending on, whatever moving average you're using or level you want to use. Again, it's at multi-year highs, right? Hasn't been this high since 2024, right? February 2024. So we're at, almost 2 years highs. So that's pretty good. Looking at housing. We talk about housing as being a leading indicator. Well, NAIL is a triple leveraged housing ETN. And, if I'm going to play housing, this is probably the way I'm going to do it. So if it can recover here and bounce like we think it's going to, I think it's going to, this is about the spot, right? You could play versus the high, we'll call it maybe 63.75 or so versus, whether it's the low or that area, 6-7% risk. It's your choice. But this is, a potential if it breaks the high here. maybe housing leads again. If you want to be in housing, there you go. Again, another interest rate sensitive type of name as well. We talked about being just in queues. We said, hey, you know what? We think the market's recovering. We could be in the triple leverage queues and make some money, right? So we talked about getting in around 53, and now we're just letting it move. And we had a super low risk, 1.9% in a triple leverage ETN. That's awesome, right? And I'm just gonna let it work now. I'm in this name myself, and why not, right? You don't have to be in you play the indexes, and I like them with a little leverage. Um, and they can work absolutely for you. And so I think that looks really good. We talked about long SPX also. Again, whichever vehicle you prefer, right? It's your trade, your money. A couple other indexes or ETFs to consider. If you want to be in the space names, but don't want a specific name or you're worried about earnings or whatever it may be, UFO is an option. Again, it's liquid enough, and it's breaking out of all the moving averages. Again, if I do this, I can see you see it's in ASTS, and anything with a red here is on our watch list. Planet Labs, Rocket Labs, Lunar. It also has some defense names like Raytheon. Um, it's got GSAT, which looks pretty good in there. Again, it has some other names that don't look quite as good. That one looks fine. That one looks pretty good. Actually, they all look good. Here you go. Here's one that doesn't look good. But overall, that's a way to play the whole complex in one fell swoop. So that's UFO. Let's get back down here. Robo is the robotics and automation ETF, right? Again, it's liquid enough. It has no, it has some international exposure too. You don't see it here, but it has some Japan and Korean and some other international exposure. Again, if it's not traded in the US, it won't show up here. But it has what you're looking for here. It's got some Tesla. It's got some, the Serve Robotics looks pretty good, right? GMED's on our focus list, and it's done very, very well. SYM doesn't look quite as good, but again, it's just Joby's on there, right? It's got a whole bunch of again robotic type names, IoT, like a name I won't trade anymore personally, but it had a very nice move after earnings. So that's Robo if you're looking for that one, and there we go. And there's another one here, also BAT. BATT. This is the lithium and battery technology. There's a lot of strength in this sector as well. Again, when we go into it, and Tesla's a big piece of that. You got Rivian, you have Bloom Energy, you got EOS, you have some of the miners in there, right? FCX and Tech, the lithium miners in there, Albemarle in there. They're all nice uptrends. You even have some rare earths in there, right? Like MP. So again, I'm sure there's going to be some foreign holdings as well in there. Gives you a little exposure to that. So that's another way to play some of these themes without buying individual names. And again, I don't know why Open's at the end here, but Open is at the end here. It's the last one on this list. And yeah, I mean, listen, this is a meme kind of momentum-y type of stock. It's going through a long consolidation. You know, where do you want to be long? Again, this is something that I'm going to use options for because it is so whippy in this name. But I know that it's definitely I would consider this a cult stock. And listen, Colts are dangerous, right? Because it doesn't matter what happens, they're going to keep buying. And I think that there's a chance that you get that kind of momentum, cultish type of move. I think at least to 15. They want 80 something, right? I think $82 is what they're saying. I don't know about that, but I think that we could get that move to 15. And if you see 15 was right where we saw roughly, maybe it's 14, maybe it's 13 and a half, but in this general range you could see that this is where we had support, 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 and you can see this beautiful kind of flag that's building. It's just getting tighter. And yeah, I think that maybe we get to 15. That's a double, right? And that's good enough. I'll join the cult to 15. Why not 14? Something like that, right? So anyway, so that's open door. Um, Here we go. And that's that. All right, so let's get this wrap this video up. I've been talking long enough and bored you guys long enough with this stuff. We have a beautiful consolidation. We have an uptrend. We have, equal weights are absolutely, and again, so much that they're extended, right? So, be careful with your initial buys. Buying right is your first and probably the most important step in risk management. But as it comes back, we should, I think those dips are buyable. I think versus here buying a breakout, I think that's more dangerous. Whereas the dips are more viable, I think, as they come back into the moving averages and show support. Be very careful on Wednesday, FOMC. That's a big deal. Again, we're expecting a quarter point cut. And I think that you're going to get volatility and it's going to try to shake you out. And there's going to be a lot of false moves. That's the way those big FOMC type things work. Really, Thursday is when we're going to see what the real move is. But I expect it to whip one way, whip the other way, and then whip back. Which I don't know which way and how many times it whips, but it's gonna whip. And again, we know from experience. Uh, I think we're in a bull market. I think we should be looking for things to buy. So hopefully we have a good December. And again, we'll worry about 2026 and next year as it gets closer. But for now, over the next, I think the next couple of weeks, I think there's money to be made. And again, we should be looking for things to buy. Thank you so much for being subscribers. If you're a subscriber, if you're just watching this on the free view, I appreciate you watching this. And if you think it could help you, this type of video, try the subscription. It's $10 a month, and there's no contract, so you keep it for as long as you want to. All right, y'all have a great day. Bye bye.